Metro Council. Jefferson County Public Schools, acting. Matt Anderson's here for JCPS. Next, we're going to do our community organizations and our citizen representatives. So just say here if I call your name. Rose Smith.
Here.
Rose Smith is here. Kungu Jaguna. Here. Kungu is here. Gary Friedman. Zenithia Law.
Here.
Zenithia is here. Angela Johnson.
Here.
Angela Johnson's here. David Lopez. Jess Brown. Freddie Brown Jr. David Price. Here. David's here. Maddie Jones. Madison Mobus.
Here.
Madison's here. Katura Heron. Kevin Holston. Here. Kevin's here. Angie Verona. Renee Brown. Joni Jenkins.
Here.
Joni's here. And I'll note that we will have just been joined by Jeff Durham from Jefferson County's office, Jefferson County Attorney's office.
Thank you, Mr. Tribune. So we have a quorum. Before we get to our agenda, I want to welcome back Dr. Matt Anderson. Welcome back. We missed you last time. We're so delighted that you're joining us today.
I appreciate it.
As a reminder to everybody, this is a public meeting, but it is not a public participation meeting. As usual, we'll follow the same procedures. I know we have some folks, members of the public here today, as we normally do. I believe Elefa is available after the meeting for a few minutes. Is that right, Elefa? To be able to take any questions that members of the public may have, but this is going to be the time for the commission to meet and discuss. All right, at your seat, you're going to see various materials previously emailed to you. One thing that was not previously emailed is a sheet where you can mark your availability. This is our last regularly scheduled Community Safety Commission meeting. So we need you guys to vote on some more meeting dates. If you could, please look at that and mark off every date that you can make work with your schedule. We will collect that during our break, and Mr. Tribune will tally that, and we'll give you the results of that so that you all can decide on your schedule moving forward. You will see today's agenda and meetings from the minutes from the prior meeting, and also our slide deck for today. So let's pop through the agenda. We did our welcome. I'd like now to move to approval of the minutes. Hopefully you guys have had time to look at these before today, but if you want to take a quick look, and anyone who's ready to make a motion to approve, please feel free to do so. All right, Mr. Will, motion to approve?
Yeah, you didn't call me out on the.
Oh, you're right, I did. I'm sorry about that. Jack Will's also.
All right. For the record, Jack Will is present, and he's also making a motion. All right, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
All right, thank you, Mr. Holston. Is there any discussion? All right, let's take a vote on approving the meeting minutes from a prior meeting. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, ayes have it, and the meeting minutes will be adopted and posted in the regular course. Now we are going to move on to our first semi-annual report on the community commitment that will be presented by Elefa. After they have done a presentation for you, we will have a break. Then we will have some time for discussion. And prior to this meeting, an email was sent out with 3 questions that Elefa posed as possible discussion questions for you to think about as we move forward with our discussion today. If there is time permitting, we'll circle back on the social media messaging that we discussed at our last Community Safety Commission meeting. We have a member of the Mayor's Communications team here to do that. We will set our meeting dates, and then we will bring up any other business, including setting the agenda for our next meeting. Present here are various members of Elefa who will introduce themselves in just a moment. And we also have Chief Paul Humphrey and Deputy Chief Emily Henley from LNPD here as well.
I do want to add that I have had members of the public come up to me and discuss, in terms of meeting times, accessibility for meetings, the reality of the give and take of when we have our meetings, so that the public can be a part of it. So that is something that we do want to take into account as we look and review our meeting times and dates, and that is something that's looking forward.
All right, so we are going to turn it over to Elefa now. Elefa will be presenting and facilitating discussion for the majority of the meeting here today. On August 5th, you received Elefa's first semi-annual report. This report, which was made available to the public on August 10th, evaluated the progress that Louisville Metro Government and LMPD have made under community commitments thus far, and reported where we are. Hopefully you've had enough time to review the report, and we will ensure that you have plenty of time to ask any questions that you have today. So no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Elefa to give a presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. And just as a reminder, we'll introduce ourselves as we are speaking and we'll move through the presentation. Today's goal is really not to speak to you, but to hear from you as far as we're concerned. So we're going to move pretty quickly for 30 minutes roughly through the presentation. I am Sheree Bristol Stewart, the lead monitor for the Elefa Louisville team. The report is now available and published publicly to anyone that may be watching, that may not be in the room. And you can find that report at www.elefa.org/Louisville. What matters most is not how Louisville arrived to this moment, but what the city leaders chose to do with it. To take this on as its own, holding itself a promise it made freely in its commitment to the people of Louisville. Our presentation will help to support that premise. The purpose is to anchor the whole meeting here. We are here. Here, and you can go to the next slide, please. Thank you so much. We're here. When you look at this slide, it talks about the show grade process. We are in the first phase of this year, the first year, which is policy review. As you see, policy starts this process. It then moves to training reviews, data and audit reviews, and then compliance assessments. What does it mean to be in compliance? A word that we broadly use when you think about compliance, but let's remind ourselves how it's been defined according to the community commitment. Louisville Metro and LMPD's progress toward compliance with each designated principal section of this agreement will be determined through compliance assessments. Compliance assessments will consist of a policy review, a training review, an audit review, a data review, and a reporting review. Full compliance assessments are the last step in the process. You do not gain compliance without having gone through the appropriate process steps based on whether or not the section is a primary or auxiliary section. I wanted to ground us here because when reading the report, some of the initial questions that we've received were, where are we in terms of compliance? But I wanted to just remind us, and then when I'm saying we, I'm speaking of Elefa here, recognizing fully that the city of Louisville, its community, its police department, its metro government have been in the midst of transformation or change before our arrival. So when I say we in this context, I'm saying Elefa. We are new to this process and new to this city, not taking away anything else that you've done before our arrival. So that is from the perspective that we're entering into this report and entering into this conversation. This report does a lot of work. This first semi-annual report in this process. The community commitment sets the requirements, the implementation plan sets the sequence, and compliance is earned phase by phase. Recognizing that the community commitment is voluntary, it covers 13 sections. Those sections build on one another. Those phases build on one another. And a later phase generally cannot begin until the one before it is complete. Training teaches the revised policy, and audits measure the trained practice. And with that, we will walk into the next series of slides.
So I'm Eric Malasson. I'm one of the deputy monitors for Elefa. As we walk through this process, it's important to stage out where we are and where we're going. As mentioned earlier, the policy review phase is the cornerstone and foundation of this work, building into the training phase. What you'll see here are all of the various sections of the community commitment by topic area. This plan is developed through LMPD and LMG's assessment of the priorities and where things are going. And we helped look at this plan in January, February, ended up approving it in March, knowing that it will be updated every year as we move through this process together. So that first phase, you can see year one is where a lot of the policy review items are front loaded, and that's by necessity and design, but it's also through kind of best practice. We have been able to get through a lot on use of force. I'll speak to that in the next slide, but ultimately that's that first one, showing that that's like the first prioritized topic for that policy review phase, and we are now moving into the training review phase for use of force. Overall, if it's a auxiliary section, it doesn't require a data or audit review. So you can see the officer employee assistance and recruitment and hiring sections at the bottom of a little asterisk there. That's again indicative of their not having a requirement for a data and audit review being an auxiliary section. This is all kind of spelled out in the community commitment. Although again, we're looking at this whole picture, we're getting foundational documents. We're making sure we're working with the department to get as much context into how they do what they do in the space that they're doing it, for us to be able to be effective in how we're reviewing their efforts. Again, policies come first, training brings them to life, data and audits show whether or not the policy and training are being put into action. The next slide, please. So kind of where we are, and this is a very high level synopsis of what's in our report. You can actually see some of this information built out in our report. And we go through, you see one colored dot there for complete is on the use of force policy review side. And I'll go through some of our actions on that in a moment. But in progress, again, this is as of the end of June. So in progress were also the topics of fair and impartial enforcement, street enforcement, which are actually taken together. I'll talk about that in a moment. The community-based public safety auxiliary section, the officer employee assistance section, and the recruitment and hiring section. We have begun a review phase on all of those topics where you see kind of in progress circled out. Again, as of the end of June, we have begun looking at individuals with behavioral health disabilities. We have started looking at some of the foundational documents. So that's kind of happened after the review period closed, but just kind of giving you all kind of real time of where we are on progress. That one is also now lit up for us on the in progress side for policy review. In looking through this, the approach that we're taking, fair and impartial enforcement and street enforcement are being taken together because a lot of this overlaps. How you're treated on the street enforcement side is as much a part of fair and impartial as it is whether or not tactically they're following the right procedures and constitutional policing. So these naturally overlap. We see this in other jurisdictions too, where we do this kind of work. It's a good practice to train these items together. You don't just train an officer on how to make a stop, you talk about procedural justice when you do it. You don't just talk about how to do an arrest, you talk about using the right lens for it, and you're checking your own implicit bias before you make that arrest, before you exercise whatever discretion might be involved in that. So these topics lend to them together, and so as a practice, we look at the policies together simultaneously. Moving back to use of force, this is something from which it took us a while to get through. A lot of it had to do with us kind of developing protocols and developing a strategy for this. When we do policy reviews with the department, we take a preliminary look at changes that they have made prior to it going out to the public now. And so that's a piece of the puzzle that we are helping to make sure that the public is getting as much of the kind of finished product as possible before we then, work through the development of a lot of these changes. And for us, it's been a good process for us to get and understand what their capacities are within the department, be able to create those relationships, make sure there's shared understanding about what the community commitment says, what language means when it comes to adjusting their policies, and then ultimately hearing from the public and incorporating that feedback in a way that's meaningful and making sure that everything was assessed properly. So for us, we were able to get through all of the use of force policies, of which there were many. And again, that's reflective of many police departments. Across the country, use of force policies tend to range in a higher volume of category when it comes to guidance given to officers about how to conduct themselves. And indeed, if you look in the community commitment itself, it has the most paragraphs out of any other section within the agreement. So that's reflective of the time and energy and effort that's taken to kind of get there. It's by no means an indictment of their progress. It is something from which the process has to play itself out. And I think we were able to gain a lot of ground and set good framework for the remaining policy sections that will be under review going forward. As the previous slide showed, our goal is to get through all of the policy reviews in line with the plan. And so we'll start picking up things like protests and demonstrations, warrants, sexual misconduct and misconduct investigations and discipline, hopefully by the end of this year, to initiate those policy review processes and get through as many of them to completion as possible. So again, this is kind of where we are on a very high level. Brian's going to take a moment now to talk through some of the specifics about the work we've done and kind of where we're going from here.
All right, thank you, Eric, and good afternoon, everyone. I am Brian Core. I am the other deputy monitor, and I also have the role of being the community liaison under the community commitment. And very glad to be here, very glad to be at this point where we are able to present to you about the work we're doing and not just keep introducing ourselves. So the work that we have been doing in this report, it covers 6 months, but it really goes back to September. In September, we were here as part of an introduction to the community, a couple of different teams. We're thankful that we were the team that was chosen. And some of you have been with us in these rooms through that journey. But that was really, for me personally, an introduction to Louisville. And subsequently, I've now been here 6 times. So we are really doing a deep dive into your community as people who don't live here and don't work here, but bring in expertise and are working to learn and observe and have that objective look at what's happening here. So we keep showing up. We had our first site visit in October 2025, and we made sure that we listened to people. We wanted to find out what was happening. We wanted to hear a sense of what people expected of us, and we knew that there had been investigations, we knew that there had been reports, but we wanted to do it in a real way that connected with people. So we came here, there was a mayor's violence reduction summit that happened in October. We came back in December for a community listening session. We were here in January for some in-service training that the police department asked us to come in and observe and help to give them some of our feedback in a technical assistance manner. We then came back in February. We had our quarterly meeting, which was the first time we came to the community and talked about the work that we had done. Good to see you, Senator. And from that, we have kept going. At that meeting, we had about 75 people, and we had built a contact list of 100 people through reaching out and connecting to different aspects of this community. We now, as you see on the slide, have over 200 people on that outreach list. In fact, just added some more people. We're getting close to 300 people. But that is not an indication of our relationships or a connection. That's just an indication of how we're doing outreach. And I will say as an aside, we are depending on all of you to help us connect. We will be here in September. September 14th is our next community meeting. We will be doing a presentation for the community and listening on this first report at Simmons College. And all of you should have an email that has that information. Please send it out to your contacts. Please share it with your list, because we can only reach out so much, but we need you to amplify that work. But continuing on with where we've been and what we've done, we came back in April for another community meeting. We did stakeholder meetings with behavioral health people, and we did another presentation for the Community Safety Commission. We also had the opportunity to participate by watching and observing the Performance Review Board and the Behavioral Health Coordinating and Oversight Committee, key parts of the community commitment for accountability and improvement. And we were back for that in May. We came back in June for the Performance Review Board, again, to look at critical incidents and how things can be improved in the work that LMP does. So we have been back and back again. And I want to focus on that just to say that we both recognize that we don't live here, and there's a really important piece to that, but it's also important that we connect as much as possible. We have done in this work, as I've talked about, community interactions. We've also had officer observations. Most of our team that's been here have done ride-alongs with officers to see what they do and how they experience things in the field and what interactions look like. Our officer liaison has met with people from the FOP and individual officers so that we can, again, get some of that anecdotal, but that lived experience, so we can understand what it feels and looks like to be an officer, what kind of support they need to keep doing their work better, what kind of questions they have about what this process is. Because for us to be effective, for the process that Louisville has engaged in to be effective, it's got to have legitimacy. We talk about procedural justice and legitimacy for community members, but it's also important for those who are tasked to deliver public safety services, whether they be police or MetroSafe. We also want to make sure that we are connecting with people who are concerned about what's happening. So we have met with Clout, we have met with other community groups, and we will continue to do that as we go forward with our work. The last thing I really want to talk about, because we have so much to say and not a lot of time, is that with the work that we have done, a key part of it was setting the monitoring protocols. This is part of the community commitment, but that was an aspect of how we do our work. The community commitment lays out what needs to happen for this process to be successful. The monitoring protocols lay out how we do our work and interact with LMPD, with Metro government, and other stakeholders who are part of it. That work took a while. It took us until March to come to a place where we and Louisville Metro government and LMPD could all agree on a process for how we do our work. And that included really foundational work on collaboration. Part of what makes this work successful in any community is not just there's the letter of the law, there's the written document, but that relationships are built so that we can collaborate effectively, so that as we go through the process, we are hearing each other, we're understanding each other, questions come up along the way as opposed to when there's a final deadline, and that is how we do the work going forward. So as we have built that foundation, the monitoring protocols with the implementation plan and these observations, we are now positioned to move forward into the next steps. And we move to the next slide, please. So there's been some really good progress. And as you've heard my colleagues say, we want to recognize that. We know there are a lot of challenges in any change process in any organization. And something as complicated as public safety involves a lot of challenges. And so we want to say very clearly that there has been real progress made. And the use of force policy suite that Eric talked about is a very complicated set of policies and documents. We did that collaborative work, figuring out how do we work together? How do we effectively look at different documents, through meetings, through written communications, and come up with something that we believe meets the community commitment, that works for LMPD, and that is something that can be shared with the public, and then take that feedback. So that has been a very good way of us both learning how to do the work together, but also producing a good result. And so as you've heard, the next phase is going to be training and then looking at how that's actually implemented. We are also very impressed by the work of the Performance Review Board. This is something that not every community has. And it's a place where the organization, the Louisville Metro Police Department, looks at itself. It's not about deciding specific cases, it's not about complaints, it's not that kind of body. It's really an effort for continuous quality improvement. And it's a really important thing because that affects how the work is done every day, and that affects how people get the services that they need. And so our people were here in May and June in person to observe those meetings. And they involved, as you may know, 3 fatal officer-involved shootings. Very weighty, very sad, very difficult for everyone involved. And the work that that board did was very important. Eric had a chance to observe one of those meetings and was able to report to us about the care and thoughtfulness with which people in that process did their work. And so that work will continue. We will continue to observe those meetings. Also want to call out the good work of tracking. It may sound a little boring unless you're a real spreadsheet person, but the smart sheet system that LMP developed is actually an amazing tool for being able to all be on the same page about where things are, what needs to be done, what's lagging, how we make progress. And it's not at all a trivial thing. It is a really important accomplishment. I think for me personally, one of the things that's been most impactful is the wellness work. The summit, the wellness center of LMPD, which we had a chance to tour on, I think our second visit here, is quite impressive. I'll say personally, I've done a lot of work back in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where I live, on officer wellness and the role of trauma in policing. And I can say that LMPD has a very strong commitment to doing that work, to supporting its staff, to supporting the community. And the resources that are there include everything from a gym and a meditation room to counseling offices, a physical therapy space. There's a full-time on-site chaplain and a full-time psychologist. The EAP that LMPD has increased its support for officers. And I think all of us can imagine that for officers to go out and do the work they do, they need to be taken care of as well. They need to have the support to treat people with dignity, to take care of themselves and take care of their families. And that is work that we have been deeply impressed by as we have looked at LMPD. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Cherie, I believe.
Sorry, so I'm late. No worries. And so we also want to highlight the areas that need attention. I think part of what we found in the first review period are areas that, for us, want to make sure are prioritized and make sure that folks have awareness of, because there is a lot of work that still needs to be done. Behavioral health becomes one of the main topics that is obviously prescient in a lot of folks' mind, given the events that happened over the review period. We've continued to urge, folks move forward that review process. LNPD and LNG have agreed and start moving those forward, and because the original plan had a lot of the items for review, later into the review period. I think it was like 9th in sequence. And so there's agreement now to kind of move some of those forward. We've started again looking at the policy and some of the foundational documents that are tied to that already. And so that is something from which we articulated in our report, and now we're seeing a response from the department and from Metro government. When we did the second thing is when we did that in-service observation in January, we find that the training itself is still not meeting a lot of the CC requirements, the community commitment requirements. So while there are committed instructors who are trying to make sure that they are hitting the lesson plans, the plans themselves do not yet align with where they need to go. And again, not really a surprise for us. In the thinking of the sequence for this, policy is really what needs to come first. So we were able to kind of see their capacity, see some of the issues. We're going to be working with them on the development of their training plan for next year and the years to come, because it is kind of a sequential process that once you have your policies figured out, you can start building your training to those. All the messaging becomes more consistent, more aligned, and we can ensure that there is learning that is happening from the officer perspective that is fully baked into what the community commitment principles are aligned with. With the process in reviewing policy, one of the things we have seen is that it's very labor intensive, and we are seeing some constraints to that resource when it comes to policy writing. So, we want to highlight that issue because we have all these different policies that we need to get through, and we want to make sure we're getting through with them, not just with speed, but with diligence and due diligence to how all the provisions are being met through the community commitment. So for us, we wanted to highlight that. It's important that we kind of see some front-end development of resources on there, and the department is, again, helping to sequence its efforts, make sure that we're in line so that all of us can move that schedule forward together. And again, in the beginning, communication and coordination had been a little uneven. When Brian had mentioned some of the things about the monitoring protocols, those are directly tied to each other, right? So making sure we have understanding about why things are coming to us, what order it's coming in. We were able to work through a lot of those issues toward the end of the period, but it's notable because we wanted to just make sure folks realize that collaboration is only effective if that coordination and communication are solid. And so for us, we think we've gotten a lot better. We did a lot of learning in that first review period, and so that's a foundation now that we're going to build on. and it's something we wanted to point out. And to say all of these issues are just a Louisville thing is not true. I just want to point that out. Like, this is something you see in every jurisdiction that is really trying to get in front of this. You don't know what you don't know, and you have to kind of work through it as you go. But the lessons we have learned through other jurisdictions from which we've worked help inform this process, help to move it forward. And so we are optimistic about the path forward now that we've kind of worked through some of these issues. But you know, our goal with these reports is not just to tell you the good stuff, it's to tell you where it needs some encouragement and some addressing of challenges. So, you know, when we do this process, we always submit the document to our partners over at LMG and LMPD to say, hey, did we get it wrong? Hey, did we get it right? That's part of this review process. So, you know, I think it helps them to kind of get ready and realize where the pieces of the puzzle that bring us into better alignment and better collaboration. Next slide. Did you want to take behavioral health? So again, we talked through behavioral health. Again, this is all written out into the report. It had not yet started by the end of June 30th, the policy review side. It has since started, you know, now into July and August. We talked about the sequencing of it. These are key factors that were in our report. But overall, we want to make sure that the prioritization of this is met with our attention so that we can stay in front of it. Even if it means one of the other topics is done in parallel, we want to focus on this. And so our resources are brought to this conversation and our subject matters are involved in coordinating with LMG on this. ABHR, that's Advanced Behavioral Health Response. The ABR officer program is a requirement that you see in a lot of jurisdictions. So there's baseline training on something called crisis intervention team training that officers typically receive. And then there's more advanced kind of approaches and better practices that are often adopted by departments. And it's not a requirement for everybody to get that, but it's usually a requirement, often on a volunteer basis in places that I've been, where folks are kind of spread throughout patrol so that if you need a go-to resource to help with a particular type of scene, so if a call comes in and you've got, you know, a particular aspect to it that is a known mental or behavioral health issue, you bring in the resource that you know is on shift, and you try to get as much folks on shift on patrol trained up on that as possible so that there could be a go-to resource. That's a program that's a requirement of the Section 10 of the community commitment. And we want to make sure that that program that's going to get built is founded with good policy, founded with good training, but we want to make sure that's a resource that is focused upon. And the department is already looking at and has asked for volunteers who wants to be in that program. And so they're starting to move on that along with us in this current review period coming up. There is a really dedicated, awesome sergeant who does a lot of this great work for behavioral health issues within the department, but it is a full-time position in our mind. And that person is not a dedicated full-time resource. They're a patrol sergeant, great patrol sergeant. But when it comes to these kind of trainings and certifications and managing the program and teaching the program and maintaining it, you often see in jurisdictions that a dedicated coordinator is often a full-time role. The department agrees, but I think there's just resource constraints around it. So for us, it's how do we make sure they have the resources for either that individual or some other support that could be a long-term support for the agency. We also know that refresher curriculum on CIT and ongoing training is something that needs to be developed. So we want to work on the policies first. We want to identify the training second, but it all needs to kind of be put into the queue. We're going to try to work as diligently as we can on that. And these issues are not just a focus on the department. The BHCOC, Behavioral Health Committee, is going to be bringing together all of the resources of Metro government to help move this in. We haven't been able to observe that before the end of this review period. We have since been able to observe it and see the agendas and the information from it. And we want to make sure we're able to attend various meetings of that on an ongoing basis. But all the community feedback we've received has been consistent. We want to make sure that there's a prioritization of this topic, especially again with the events that have happened over the last review period. And so for us, we are bringing that in, and we want to make sure for us that it's a priority that we adopt as well.
Last slide, next slide, please. Thank you. The road ahead, July to December, and we are currently in August. So as you can imagine, we are looking in the third quarter to be able to, we have our community meeting. As Brian stated, we're here the week of the 14th. And we want to hear from residents and communities. So if, again, please share the dates and the information so that we can have more of our community members involved. November is the fourth quarterly meeting for NACOL, and we will be here. Elefa will be here as a part of NACOL presentation. And so ongoing in terms of subject matter expert and policy review, as Eric already stated, we're intending to see the street enforcement, fair and impartial policing as we dig a little deeper. So our priorities, as you can imagine, is continue to get through the remainder of the policies. Our goal is to have reviewed all of the policies that hinge these 13 sections by the end of the year. I know that that is a very eager goal, but that is the reality of our goal. So that is what we have coming up to the next quarter and the end of the year. Is the priorities, of course, is the formal review, being able to see that in behavioral health. As we started, Eric already stated, we've already started looking at some of the minutes in the meetings, but we are intending to be able to see that live and in person. Looking forward to that. And of course, the year-end goal again is to see those 13, all of the topics covered through the policies by LMPD and Metro government. So that's what we're expecting to see through the end of this year. And of course, from the close of it will be our second semi-annual report. Next slide. That then takes us, I know we're going to do a break, but that then takes us to the 3 questions that we left you with. So thank you. I know we said a whole lot in 31 minutes. We said an awful lot in 31 minutes, but the goal really is to hear more from you than we are speaking. We recognize for those that have had the opportunity to read the report, we thank you. We recognize the number of pages, but it was important to be able to get all of that information and content for the things that we have not been able to say to this point because we were working, building the foundation and doing a lot of work behind the scenes. We wanted to make sure we didn't miss anything. And we wanted to audible the things that we're starting to see. You'll see that written in the next report. And I know you said we're going to take a break here. So we're going to take a break here and I'll turn it back over.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Elefa, for that very, very comprehensive report, and thank you for breaking it down for members of the commission. We have reserved more time to discuss than we did to present, so we have plenty of time for Elefa to address all of your questions. Before we do that, let's take a 5-minute break. If you could, during that break, please make sure to fill out your sheet with your availability for the next commission meetings. It's front and back. And then pass it over to Mr. Tribune. He will tally that up, so by the end of this meeting, we should be in a position to select some future dates. All right, thanks everybody.
Louisville, it is our chance to change the direction and to make it better. We deserve better. We get there together.
This is brought to you by the people to elect Shamika Parrish Wright.
These are the undeniable facts.
We are here today as a result of an election.
If you show up, you have power. You have power if you show up.
Anything that you were concerned about, any worry that you have for you and your family, we can tie it directly to a vote into an election.
The Louisville Urban League has created a direct opportunity for residents to engage with those seeking office. The next set of events for the Power Shift is a series of forums for JCPS board candidates. With the recent state and legislative changes shaping a brand new 5-district map, this election represents a pivotal moment for the future of Jefferson County Public Schools, students, and the community. To give constituents a meaningful opportunity to hear directly from you, the Louisville Urban League and our community partners are hosting a series of public candidate forums, one for each district in August. Tomorrow, August 18th, 19th, 20th, 25th, and 26th. Come to the forums physically, join them online, but if you do nothing else, stay live.
Hey guys, before we get back to the live stream, I'm Tracy, the bartender at Southern Hospitality Bar and Grill, located at 3402 West Broadway. You guys got to come and check us out. You can call your order in, and the phone number is 502-822-1474. Again, I'm Tracy, the bartender at Southern Hospitality. Come check us out, guys.
Hey, I know you're watching the live stream right now, but I want to take a moment to tell you to check out this new book right here over my shoulder. Believe me, it'll be worth it.